Welcome to Back in Your Day Memories. We're going back to February 1984 where Sir John visits Downing Street. Welcome, Sir John. How are you, sir? So, you met Mrs. Thatcher. What was she like?
Well, I was very fortunate to be along in the era when Mrs. Thatcher was around. Mm. She was a very pleasant, decent person, but a pragmatist at heart.
Right.
She saw what she needed to do,
right,
and she pursued it.
Okay.
She did not suffer fools gladly. In fact, I was fortunate because I was around during her era, which was the same era of Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
Which meant the fact that I had the opportunity to communicate with both of them,
okay,
and to try to achieve what I want to achieve with their support. And you
right,
put that together with George H. Bush,
yes,
the senior, the father, who was my big supporter from the time I met him. And all along, he was always encouraging me to do things and to supported me in whatever I wanted to do.
Okay.
So, Mrs. Thatcher, there I was, the linchpin between Britain and the United States.
Right.
And I moved between both of them in terms of ideas and ideals that represented really the democracy. Keep in mind, we had communism.
Yes.
We had the threat of Russian subs in the Atlantic. We had the economic conditions that were brought about as a result of the increased price of oil, which had a rapid inflation, which caused our strike in '81.
Right.
But at the same time, we had to adjust our economies. So when I talked to Mrs. Thatcher I talked to Mr. Reagan first about the treaty, and he said to me, when I got through my argument with him about it, or my statement, he said to me, well, get Mrs. Thatcher's approval. I'll tell you how pragmatic she was. And if you get Mrs. Thatcher's approval, instead of the ambassador doing the job, you can do the job yourself.
Okay.
So I got on a plane, I went to London, I asked for permission to see her, and she saw me almost instantly.
Wow.
And I told her what I wanted to do, and I needed a letter from her authorizing me to represent Bermuda in Washington negotiations.
Okay.
And she said, yeah, well, I understand, and can you wait? I said, sure, because I'd like to go back to Washington and deliver it to the president.
Right.
I waited while she produced them, and she came back to me and said, is this satisfactory? It was exactly what I wanted.
Right.
I took it back to the president, and that started the process of being able then to, because it normally would be done by the ambassador.
Okay.
And I wanted to put some heart into it. I just didn't want to put a sort of bureaucratic process to it. I wanted to put heart into it.
Yes.
This was our survival. This is what was going to make us a better place. And only you can do that yourself as a leader. And that's why Premier Burt is out there now running around trying to get people to understand Bermuda. And only he can truly speak on behalf of Bermuda.
Yes.
You know, as a leader of the country that was elected by the people, to let people know not only what we want, but how we want it and where our hearts are about getting it. Okay. So, Mrs. Thatcher, then we met on many occasions for many different issues. Some we agreed with, some she would not support us on the sanctions against South Africa because she felt as though that would have such a negative effect on Britain. Right. But we stood and we argued about the pros and cons of that issue. We wanted to do it and felt very strong about it. But sometimes we agreed to disagree without taking a position of animosity or antagonism in the process. And that's why, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But the bottom line is, make sure that, don't make your enemy, don't make a person your enemy and then expect them to be your friend. Yes. And that's what my philosophy was. If you want a friend and you need somebody, right, you treat them as a friend. Yes. And when you can't agree, you agree to you agree to disagree without antagonistic feeling. Absolutely. So we got a lot of things done, and she was a big supporter of ours, and so was President Reagan, and so was President Bush. And we went through the whole cycle of bringing Bermuda internationally into the international business world, right, which we enjoyed. Which we enjoyed since 1988. We've enjoyed a long time of international insurance, particularly insurance and reinsurance business. Right. You know, before we just mainly had the captive insurance business in Bermuda, which you heard very little of. We still have a lot of them here. But the big dominant employers and facility users of Bermuda is the insurance and reinsurance business.
Okay. I mean, I know from, you know, like living in the UK, Margaret Thatcher wasn't well liked by a lot of people.
Oh, because she had to bring about reforms that were not popular. You closed down coal mines. Did you want England still be a coal mining place? You know, you bring about social reforms that are not popular amongst even some people within your own.
Yes.
Or you increase taxes.
Right.
I mean, what did her in was the poll tax when she tried to introduce a tax, service tax.
Yes.
And it you know, they conspired against her when she was in France, and they pushed her out of office.
Yes.
She took some pretty hard positions. The labor movement was constantly shutting down industry.
Yes.
And she took on Scottsdale.
Yes.
About labor issues and so forth. And the thing is, the truth of the matter is, she was a winner, and Britain moved her forward. I mean, you stopped seeing the black soot around England.
Right.
You saw buildings start to go up.
Yes.
She was a marketeer, otherwise she believed in a market economy.
Right.
Keep in mind she was conservative and not a socialist by no stretch of the imagination. You know, history now has recorded when, you know, how pragmatic she was when down in the Falklands when they were attacked by the Argentinians.
Yes.
She sent ships and down there, traveling long distances to get there, and won the war.
Yes.
So, you know, I mean, if you look at it, post Second World War, or during the war even, you're Churchill.
Right.
Basically, can you remember anybody else except Maggie Thatcher? And others have tried to mimic that, but they haven't succeeded. I mean, you've only had those two people, basically. Now, you might say, well, neither of them contributed much to this. Your economy has to work. You can't pay for social responsibilities unless you have economic means.
Right, absolutely.
And that's what we're suffering from right now. Our social conditions are such that they need a lot more attention.
Yes.
But we need to step up our economy to do so.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that we will need to do, is to find ways to step up our economy. But we're locked into this idea that we don't want foreigners, or some people don't want foreigners. We're locked into this idea that somehow the other foreigners will have a right to take things from us. I haven't seen that happen. What we do is, what I see is the fact they come in, they allow it to do certain things we allow them to do, and if they don't, they leave. And that's been going on, whether it was Marriott building the hotel down in St. George's, who built it and didn't work, and he left and lost a lot of money here. There were other projects in Bermuda that have done the same thing. In fact, the foreigner brings his dollar in, it's not a liability to us. He spends his money doing a project or doing something particular, but I suggested the city of Hamilton.
Yes.
If it fails, there's no liability, he loses his money, you don't lose ours. And if another foreigner comes in and buys it, that's when he might recover some of it.
Right.
But what we're trying to do is to have an economy that works, but we don't want the foreign capital into Bermuda unless we see it in the form of companies that do business in Bermuda and employ people. Well, foreigners, there are all sorts of ways of employing people. And there are a lot of people, Bermudians, who can't work in these international companies. When we have some construction going, as we should be doing in the city, building some apartments, some small hotels, that gives Bermudians a lot of work to do and a lot of opportunities.
Okay.
But nobody wants to challenge that because people are saying we've just got too many foreigners. We don't have too many foreigners. We've got a population now of 60,000. In fact, our population and Cayman's population is about the same.
Yes.
They have a booming economy because they, just 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they had half of that population. Ours has stood still, maybe in fact declined. We were up to 66,000.
Right.
And theirs has gone up now to 61,000.
Wow.
So And I don't want us to be a Cayman, don't misunderstand me. But what I want us to do is to be reasonable and balanced in what we do to make sure we look after our people. And I'm not convinced that we are doing the right thing to look after our people presently. There are too many people out there can't pay the bills, power cost is high,
Yes.
can't eat proper food, food costs are high. And we have 13,000 people, 65 and over, who can't get the medical help. Some of them can't get the medical help they need because one time they got government subsidies and different things which have been cut back. We need to restore some normality in caring for people, creating jobs for people that are meaningful jobs and not just promises, and move on to the next phase of making sure then that our next generation then can see that their parents were looked after, therefore they have a responsibility to look